So we told you a lot on this show about the potential dangers of big tech. Some of those dangers are imminent and they're technological, and the main one is robotics and artificial intelligence. Remarkably, the political figure who is making the most sense on this subject, who's thought about it most deeply, is a Democrat who is running for president. He's Andrew Yang. He's an entrepreneur. And as we said, he's a Democratic presidential candidate. He says that artificial intelligence and expanded automation could potentially cause violence in this country and that we need to do something about it right now. Andrew Yang joins us tonight. Andrew, thanks very much for coming on. And I meant that with sincerity. I haven't heard anybody in our political conversation describe the threat as clearly and compellingly as you have. Why should we be worried about automation?
Well, if you look at the backdrop, we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and those communities have never recovered. Where if you look at the numbers, half of the workers left the workforce and never worked again, and then half of that group filed for disability. Now, what happened to the manufacturing workers is now going to happen to the truck drivers, retail workers, call centers, fast food workers, and on through the economy as we evolve and technology marginalizes the labor of more and more Americans.
What will be the effects of that to you? I mean, that's a massive displacement of people. What will happen once that happens?
Well, as you said, I think it's going to be disastrous, where if you look at truck drivers alone, being a trucker is the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in this country. And my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves because that's where the money is, where we can save tens, even hundreds of billions of dollars by trying to automate that job. But I was just with truck drivers in Iowa last week, and imagining that community recovering from their income going from, let's call it $50,000 a year to much, much less than that catastrophically, it's going to be a disaster for many, many American communities.
You're one of the only people I've ever met who's honest about the effects of deindustrialization. I remember in Washington, the idea was they'll all become computer programmers, and so everything is fine, but that didn't happen. My question is, do we have to sit passively back and let this happen to the country?
Well, that's why I'm running for president, Tucker, is I think it would be insane to just sit back and watch this automation wave overtake our communities and our economy. So we're not ostriches. We can get our heads up out of the sand and say, look, we get it. Artificial intelligence is real. Self-driving cars and trucks are being tested on the highways right now, and we need to evolve. We need to actually start pushing the way we think of economic progress to include how our families are doing, how our children are doing, and things that would actually matter to the American people, because GDP is going to lead us off a cliff. You know, robot trucks, great for GDP, terrible for many, many American communities. So we need to get with the program and figure out how to actually make this economy work for people.
I sit with my jaw open. I agree with you so strongly. Let me ask you finally, why isn't this a central question in the campaign of everybody running for president on any side? And why instead are they talking about issues that really are kind of frivolous? Why aren't they talking about this?
You know, it's a good question, Tucker. I mean, one of the reasons I'm running for president is to push this into the center of the mainstream agenda, where every candidate should be talking about what we're going to do about the fact that we're automating away the most common jobs in the economy right now. As we're sitting here together, the labor force participation rate in the United States is 63.2%, the same level as Ecuador and Costa Rica. And if anyone thinks that's where America ought to be, I mean, that number is even going to be further challenged when all this technology comes online. So we have to make America embrace this challenge of the 21st century and then try and address it together as a people.
Last question. Shouldn't people who cite unemployment statistics be penalized for saying something so stupid?
Yeah, we have a series of bad numbers, and I referred to GDP as one. Certainly, the headline unemployment rate is completely misleading. Yes. And one of my mandates as president is I'm going to update the numbers so they actually make sense to the American people.
Yes. Because so we can know what's going on. Otherwise, you can't make wise decisions.
Yeah, right now, again, and you know this, our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years, first time in 100 years because of a surge in suicides and drug overdoses. How can you say an economy is healthy when our people are dying? It makes no sense. I
literally couldn't. I don't even know what you think on the other issues, and I just support what you said so much. I appreciate your coming on.
Thank you, Tucker. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
We do a Fox News alert. Andrew Yang dropping out. We're going to go to him live.
And Evelyn and this campaign at every turn. Your passion and energy, your donations, and hundreds of thousands of hours calling, volunteering, your enthusiasm, dedication, and commitment. We've accomplished so much together. We have brought a message of humanity first and a vision of an economy and society that works for us and our families to millions of our fellow Americans. We went from a mailing list that started with just my Gmail contact list to receiving donations from over 400,000 people around the country and millions more who've supported this campaign. One of the things I'm most proud of, we gave $1,000 a month to 13 families around the country, including Jody Fassey right here in New Hampshire. We highlighted the real problems in our communities as our economy is being transformed before our eyes by technology and automation. And Americans know now that when you go to a factory in Michigan, you do not find wall-to-wall immigrants doing work. You find wall-to-wall robot arms and machines doing the work that people used to do. We stood on the debate stage and shifted our national conversation to include the fourth industrial revolution, a topic no one wanted to touch until we made it happen here with this campaign. Our signature proposal, universal basic income, has become part of the mainstream conversation. We increased the popular support for universal basic income to 66% of Democrats and 72% among voters 18 to 34. Without a doubt, we accelerated the eradication of poverty in our society by years, even generations. And that is thanks to all of you who are here
Andrew
tonight.
Yang dropping out. Two things you could say about Andrew Yang, whatever you think of his views. Good guy, personally, and a serious person, talking about things that actually matter and will matter 20 years from now, unlike so many running.
I can't tell you how sad I am that Andrew Yang is leaving this race. I think that he represented a positive populism. So much of politics now is, who do you hate? Do you hate the liberal elite? Do you hate immigrants? Do you hate billionaires? Do you hate, who do you hate? That's who he's going to. And the thing about Andrew Yang is, you could join the Yang gang and not hate anybody. He just wanted to make sure that we retooled the economy for these new challenges. And I just think that from a decade perspective, he may wind up being a much more significant voice than we recognize tonight. And also, he broke a color barrier when it came. He's an Asian American guy, and now that's a thing. Right. And you saw a lot of young Asians get involved, and also it wasn't a big thing. And so I just think that to lose Andrew Yang at this point is, you got to recognize. The other thing I'll say about him is his idea around universal basic income, was it like 3% or like no percent? A year and a half ago. Now it's a 55% popular idea in some polls. That's a big deal.
Moments ago, fundamentally raising, doubling taxes.
If people listen maybe to some of Andrew Yang's plan, and take some money from the trillion-dollar companies that Americans help build up, maybe we would not be as panicked, because we would all be sharing in the profitability of these companies. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he's right about this, as we call it the fourth industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be middle class? Are there going to be jobs left with the technical breakthroughs that are occurring? We've already lost 220,000 retail jobs around the country because Amazon everybody's shopping on Amazon. They're not going to the Saks in Chicago, or they're not going to Benetton's in Milwaukee, et cetera. And so that's a big deal. But I think more importantly, we can afford to give everybody affordable health care. Under my plan, we can give a public option that will, in fact, not raise a single solitary tax. I'm the only one in this race that's actually gotten health care done with President Obama. Went out there and got the votes for it. I promise you I can get it done. And it will lower your drug prices, lower your co-pays across the board, and we can pay for it. And it's totally within our wheelhouse.
You did get it done, and I like that. One thing that is interesting to me, Mike Bloomberg wasn't on the ballot in Iowa. He hasn't debated. He wasn't on the ballot in New Hampshire. He won't be on in Nevada or South Carolina. Yet somehow he's polling pretty well with African Americans. You mentioned just now in one of your answers that you'll be debating him on redlining and stop and frisk.
A lot of other things.
And a lot of other things.
No.
I want to know what you think about this released audio that just came out about his stop and frisk comments, because I asked him about stop and frisk when he was here on the show, and he apologized profusely for it, although he defended it as recently as, January
Well, look,
of 2019.
Why are you laughing?
well, I'm laughing because it's amazing how every single thing I've said for the last 40 years has come up, and I've answered them all. We're just now getting into the place where we're looking at other people's records. For example, we have one of the biggest issues we have to face is gun violence in this country. And gun violence, not only in our schools. You send your kid to school, you duck and run down the hall, zigzag. How many of you sent your kids off to school and they came home and said, "Mommy, this is what I had to do.
Yeah.
I had to do today."
Awful.
And I've been there with all those families in Parkland and those families up in Connecticut. And, losing a child is staggering. But here's the other piece of it. Every single day today on the streets of the United States of America, African Americans and minorities are being gunned down as if it were a massacre every day. And we're not talking about it. No one talks about it. We've got to eliminate assault weapons.
We're going to come back and we're going to talk more. We'll be right back.